Clap it up. Here we go.
Hey.
And we're back with another episode of the Pros with Con podcast. I got my good buddy, Cory, Big Bozer Beaumont, back in town today. Go ahead and say hello, Cory.
Hey, everybody. Glad to be back.
Cory is back. We had him on real early in the Pros with Con podcast tenure with Chris. Been wanting to get him back on, and this is the perfect opportunity to do so because we're celebrating little bros. Your son's
Yeah.
your son's diaper party today.
Can't believe I'm a granddad already.
Yeah, Cory's in town, and it's a perfect opportunity to get him back on and talk some exercise physiology stuff.
Yes, sir.
A good topic and one that he's obviously passionate about. So this will be a great episode for people to listen in and kind of figure out what we talk about on a regular basis, but also like what he does as a professor, and then like what his case studies and all these things were like when he was getting his PhD down in Knoxville, University of Tennessee. So if you guys, go Vols, he did. Want to check out more about his background, you go check out that episode. It's earlier on. I think it might have been episode 4 with Chris. Go over Cory's background and how he kind of got to where he was. We're going to focus a lot on specifically a case study that he did for his dissertation to retrieve or kind of get his PhD. So this is going to be a cool episode. Very in-depth, and I think people will think it's pretty fascinating and interesting to kind of see how this all correlates. There's going to be a lot of words that you'll know, like they're common words, but I'm sure Cory will get... Sheesh.
He's fired up, folks.
Yeah! He'll get intelligent with it. So, it's going to be a cool episode, and we'll kind of keep it rolling from there. How's that sound?
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, man.
I'm fired up. I'm very excited to be here. I'm serious.
Yeah, hey. Bros with Con podcast, big deal.
That's right.
He's been studying all week, looking at notes, getting prepared for today, so that's always cool. He's got his little notebook.
Not 3 pages, not 2.5
Definitely not
pages.
2.5 pages.
No.
So dissertation. Explain what that is for the people.
All right, so in kind of the big dissertation is just the final project you do in grad school that you propose first to your committee. Here's what I want to do. Here's why I want to do it. They give you the go-ahead. You do the project. You defend your project because they're going to critique it a little bit. And then when you pass, you are done.
Obviously,
it's
like
your exit.
Told everyone, like, if you argue, I will.
Yeah, I physically threatened them. Yeah. And yeah, it was a serious threat. No, but it was very fun. It was obviously very in-depth, and we'll get into some of the background stuff before, but it's basically setting the stage for your research agenda, I guess. So I have a line of research where my big picture goal is to improve exercise adherence, making people continue to exercise rather than continue with this phenomenon that we've seen where people start a program, then they stop. Then they go back to the gym, then they stop. And then it's New Year's, and then they stop again. That's been my whole focus, and this dissertation that you were part of is a piece of that puzzle. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Beautifully explained.
Thank you.
So I guess that's kind of cool how you say that and how you described it. It's going to be, again, like a topic we've discussed over time on this podcast with like why that happens with people and like what they could do to help it. But this is very like case study, like research type stuff, which is awesome. I think that'll go along with a lot of stuff we talked about. So, I mean, kind of setting the stage a little bit. The case study he sent out to just people who like volunteer. And you can kind of talk about like what that was like and what we did and what we had to do. But basically, just answer a bunch of questions, how I'm feeling, ready to work out, or a couple times a day type of thing. So how long was it?
It was 21 straight days of the surveys, which each day was 4 surveys per day. And then after those 21 days, I crunched some numbers, and then we had like an interview where I could kind of present you your results and get your feedback on it. And that's going to be kind of when we get into results and main findings and things like that. But that was the main setup.
Yeah, and so basically it was like 4 surveys throughout the day. I mean, they took maybe 3 minutes to like click how you're feeling at that given moment. And I kind of want to let you talk about that, but from just like a standpoint of, like you said, 21 straight days of just people like, how many participants did you have? Do you
There
know?
ended up being 11 that like qualified. So there
Okay.
was 13 total, but you had to do, I think we set the threshold at 50 of the 84 surveys.
Mm-hmm.
You had to do at least 50, and
Oh,
two
okay.
people didn't do 50. So we kind of like threw their
Was
data
Anise
out.
one of them?
No, Anise, surprisingly, just kidding. We all believed in you, Anise. But she got them all
That's
done.
funny.
Yeah, I don't know if she did it
I
the
just
right
remember
way, but
she was like complaining about it. I'm like, well, you volunteered. What do
yeah,
you want? Like, just
no,
do it. I don't
nobody made her do
know.
it.
Nobody.
She did it for the love of the
Yeah,
game, I guess.
That's true.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah. So go ahead and talk a little bit more about like what these surveys were exactly.
Yeah.
And then just from like a broad scope of like what the questions were like and what that kind of thing.
Yeah. So basically, just to kind of give some background about like
Sure.
how these surveys were created, because there was something like 51 or 52 items that everybody would rate how they were feeling in that moment, right?
Mm-hmm.
So part of that was informed by previous research that shows the feelings that you experience during exercise.
Yeah, I guess we should say that like
Yeah.
this was very geared around towards like exercise and like how you are feeling to, are you ready to exercise? Like this is all focused on that kind of thing. I guess that'd be something to
Yeah.
mention right now.
Yeah, so like the exercise adherence piece that we
Yeah.
kind of talked about a second ago, where it there's some research that shows that like the better you feel during exercise, the more likely you are to continue to exercise, which I think
Mm-hmm.
most people don't need to be like a nerd to get that. Like they don't
Yeah.
need to do research. It just kind of makes sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like if you have fun, if you feel good while you're doing it, you're just going to keep doing it. But
Mm-hmm.
if it sucks and it doesn't feel good, that's what pushes people kind of away from exercise. So, or anything in general. But there's this behavioral theory. Not to get too nerdy here,
Go
but
ahead, get nerdy
the
with it.
the
You know what I mean?
affective reflective theory of physical inactivity
How
and
about
exercise.
Chris doesn't know the difference between effective and effective?
Yeah. So for his sake, the theory is abbreviated the art of physical inactivity and exercise. So it's affect with an A, Chris.
Chris, jot that one down, buddy.
Affective reflective theory, which is basically the human brain has two different processes when it's encountering any type of stimuli, right? So there's a type 1 process and a type 2 process. Type 1, it's subconscious, automatic, boom. You don't even think about what you're feeling, you just feel it.
Mm-hmm.
And then type 2 is a slower, more cognitive process where you do have time to stop and assess and think about things. So, as an example, people might be driving and they drive past the gym and automatically have an association with the gym.
Sure.
Or a doctor might say, your blood pressure's high, you need to start exercising. And that first exposure, it's like the thought of exercise. Could be good or it could be bad.
Mm-hmm.
Type 2 would be, all right, doctor said I needed to exercise. Maybe I don't want to, but I know it's going to be good for me. I know it's going to help me live a healthier life. It's more deliberate, right? You wrestle with the idea. Whereas type 1, you don't even know you're having that process, right? So that's the affective response, the automatic like gut reaction. So if that gut reaction is negative, that goes back to what you're saying where you're probably not likely to do it. But if your gut reaction is positive and you have these like pleasant associations with exercise, you're going to gravitate towards it. So a lot of this background research that went into the dissertation was geared towards how do we make that exercise experience pleasant so that people don't have to overcome the negative association, right? And so that leads into the determinants of affect. And stop me if I'm like rambling too much, but so there's been plenty of research on what influences that affective response, what makes it automatically good or automatically bad. And for the longest time, intensity was like considered
Mm-hmm.
the
Mm-hmm.
king of the
Yeah.
affective response, where if it was super high intensity, that would lead to negative affect. People didn't like it. And if it was lower intensity, it was pleasant and people did like it.
Mm-hmm.
But we know from like real life, especially folks that do a class at Aurelius or do high
Mm-hmm.
intensity things, that just because it's high intensity doesn't really actually mean that it's always bad, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's, I mean, people are coming back. They
Yeah.
want more. So that got people wondering, like, what are some of the other determinants of the affective response? So I did a quick little study down in
A
Knoxville
little study.
where people would exit the gym, and there was a survey similar to what you did, where it was, rate your affective response to the exercise session you just did, 0 to 100, 100 being the best, 0 being the worst. And they'd give a rating, and then we'd ask them to explain what informed their response.
Mm-hmm.
And the results kind of showed that energy levels going into the gym, mood levels going into the gym, physical condition, all of these other things have an impact on the affective response. It's not just as simple as saying, like, keep it low intensity, then everybody will like it and everyone will do it all the time. So I think that's hopefully something people can imagine in their real life, where if it's too low intensity, it's like, it's boring. It's not challenging.
Mm-hmm.
It's not something that you have to like dig deep and finish and get that satisfaction of like, heck yeah, I just finished something tough, right? So the idea with these surveys was to continue that line of thought, which is, all right, these things that impact the affective response have a lot in common with what some other researchers have called readiness to exercise. And that comes from a strength and conditioning background, a guy by the name of Bill Kramer, who started at UConn, now he's at Ohio State. But he had a checklist that coaches would use with their athletes, where before the session even started, they would check hydration status, what else? Coach athlete interaction to kind of gauge like mood. There would be some initial performance of like the warm up sets to see how things were moving, and based on all of this feedback, they would tweak the workout itself. So if someone was in this high readiness state, they would say, forget the plan, get after it. Like, I know we have something written for today,
Mm-hmm.
but go nuts because you're in a high readiness state,
Okay.
and we want to capitalize on that.
Oh, wow.
The other possibility is that you come in and you slept poorly,
Mm-hmm.
you hardly had any water, you're super stressed because work stunk or you got in a fight with someone. And so, all right, maybe you're not the most ready. Let's dial this back. Let's keep you moving. We'll keep you on track. But the more you can match your readiness load, the better the affective response.
Mm-hmm.
The better the affective response, the more people exercise. So,
It's an interesting concept to think about from that perspective, as far as like the research behind it, because like we talked about, just like if your body's not feeling good that day, like maybe dial it back a little bit. But like I guess they wouldn't really know that unless they feel it, and then they kind of go from there. Or if they come into the gym and they just don't feel great, finding that kind of threshold or when to push versus when not to push. This is kind of like just kind of dialing it in from a more research perspective, which I think is cool.
Yeah.
But it's just like we've had conversations like this, like when you come in and you're just like, I don't know if I'm feeling it, but you still like try and grit through it a little bit, which we'll probably talk about
certainly.
in these studies. No big deal. I kind of
Big inspiration for that little sub theme.
But actually though, just like saying how this kind of applies to those conversations, but like there's like studies out there to like that people are applying this like in like weight rooms with like actual people. So I think that's pretty cool. I don't know.
Yeah, it supports things that good coaches were already doing, and it also gives some evidence-based approaches for people who maybe hadn't thought about that, especially people who are trying to like exercise or work out on their own. It's super common to, find a program online or download a spreadsheet that is super rigid, that on week 1 you do 4 sets of 10 with 65%, and then you go up and up, and like that's a good template for people who maybe aren't familiar with this auto regulation. That's the term for like making tweaks based on your readiness. But if people don't have that guidance or that coach or trainer or someone to help steer them and make those adjustments, they might walk into the gym, feel super crappy, and all they have is what's written. I got to do 5 sets of 5 with 85%. This stinks.
Yeah, yeah.
But when you have a coach who's familiar with some of these things, like, let's work with what you got. Let's make sure that, you know, you don't overextend yourself, because that could lead to injury. But on a more positive note, if 5x5 at 85 is just too easy, like, let them off the leash and like capitalize on that.
Yeah.
And that's how you get the best physiological results. You get the gains in strength, power, speed.
All things that you and I both have.
In abundance.
Yes.
Almost in too much. Every time I see Chris, I'm like, do you need any of my strength,
like some?
power,
I'll give
speed?
you some,
like,
yeah.
I don't know what to do with all this.
You need my strength, power, speed?
Yeah. It's like,
You need any of my strength, power, speed?
do you need that or no?
You need any of that? Though?
But so it's cool to see that, you know, it makes intuitive sense. Like anytime I've talked about these factors that impact readiness to exercise, no one has been like, whoa, I didn't even think that my mood or energy or physical condition, like if you have aches and pains, like it all has face validity, like just appears to make sense.
Yeah.
But it's cool to get like empirical research evidence that shows like, yes, what we are doing is the most optimal right now, rather than just cookie cutter, stick to this exact program. And we'll get into even more, like you said, times to not lean too heavily on like low readiness, because there are times that it's going to have to be like, all right, I know you're not feeling the best, but you're going to have to grind through it and show some of that grit. Pardon me. But yeah, it was cool to get the research support for what we used in the dissertation study. That's where we pulled some of these items from for the surveys. Yeah. So to go a little deeper, into this, the thing about readiness is we can't assume that, you know, with a multi-dimensional construct like readiness to exercise, if it's made up of 4 things, 5 things, 6 things, we still didn't know at the time what's the most important thing, because we could have a list and energy might be crucial to me. I need caffeine, I need pre-workout, I need to have my sleep, whereas mood might be crucial to someone else, where if they're in a bad mood, that's going to have the biggest impact. So the big, you know, rationale for this dissertation that you participated in was, let's find if there's a difference between a person's, you know, profile of readiness across a group of people, because we don't want to just start assuming all people respond to the exact same thing, and that energy, all these things matter the most, and that over time even they might be different, where you might be in a phase of your life where your mood is your biggest determinant of readiness, and then later on down the line it's more about your physical status. Like if you've got bumps and bruises, if you're banged up, that might be more important. So it's like, we don't want to paint ourselves into a corner and just say, here, assess these 4 things, these are the only things that matter. So the idea of you doing the same surveys that Anise and all these other people were doing is that, you know, running the stats and creating the profiles, let's see how similar and how different they are amongst each other, and then have that interview where it's like, here's your profile, Nick, tell me how you feel about it. So that might be a good way to, or a good time for me to shut up and let you talk a little bit. I'm going wild, dude.
This is the whole point. This is what we want. I guess a question I do have is, how did you even come up with this idea to study this, or kind of use this as your topic to choose to research on for your dissertation?
I was told to do it. Just kidding. No, I'm just kidding.
Do this study.
But basically, one of the big motivations for me, even attending grad school and like pursuing a PhD is that, like I said, the adherence levels to exercise are like rough. There was a study from the early 2000s that said there's like a 45% dropout rate for people that start an exercise program. Almost half of them are just like, forget it, I'm done. And then another study, Middleton and colleagues, 2013. If you just want to look it up, I can let you know. But
just naming like research studies like you're a lawyer.
It's fine. That first one, the 45% dropout, that's Marcus, 2006. But no, another study found that even for the people that do get through an entire program aimed at improving physical activity, like make people more active, that once that program, that structured program was done and they just let people go, they followed up with them afterwards, and there is a big trend of regressing back to their normal levels of physical activity. So from that sense, there's people that just won't stick to a program, and then when they're done with a program, they fall right back into their old ways. And to kind of add to the sort of bummer picture is that as far as lifting weights in general, some of the more recent stats showed that I think it was 27.6, don't quote me on that, % of adults report that they lift at least 2 days per week, targeting major muscle groups. Wow. Just a quarter of the population. Not great.
If that, I mean, that's like a whole point of this podcast, is to try and like bring light to that. Is at least one of the ideas, is to shed some light on what can we do better to have people get more healthy and sustainable for the rest of their lives. If only a quarter of the people, give or take, are lifting weights only 2 times per week, that's not a good start. So how do we go, what do we do from here to help, I don't know, inspire people, get people educated, that kind of thing, motivated? Like, these are all things that could tie into it, but like, that's an alarming statistic.
Yeah. To make it even more alarming,
really,
sorry, hope we're sitting down listening to this.
When you really boil it down even more,
is that 27.6% or whatever, that's self-report. So that's based on asking adults, like, do you do 2 days per week? And we've seen an overwhelming trend in self-report data that people inflate that. So it might be less than 20. It's like asking someone, I think for men, they over-report height. You know what I mean? So when it's self-report, you inflate. And when it's like, hey, do you exercise? People that know that exercise is good and that they should be doing it can tend to be like, yes, I guess.
Another layer in there.
Just another layer in there. So, and not to go wild on the stats, but did you know that the Titanic was only like half full?
I forgot to.
Yeah, there's only like 1,300 people.
I should. I forgot to say we're just talking about Titanic today. Actually, sorry.
It was like half empty, which is good, I guess.
Yeah, like you thought it would be double the amount of casualties, but or non-casualties. There were some survivors.
A couple of them.
Rose had
Shout out Rose.
Yeah, not move over.
Don't even get me started.
Actually. The fourth smokestack wasn't real, though.
It's fake. It's for aesthetics.
If you were in that first episode, you know that. But if you weren't, now
check
you know.
Back. But anyways, back to, so that's what got me interested in this line of research specifically, is like finding out how many people don't lift weights, how many people start and then stop. And then, I mean, it kind of goes without saying that lifting is something we care about, something that I care about. And I'm like, we recognize the value in it. How the heck can we get people to do it more? And it's like, well, make it more enjoyable.
Yeah, all these subtopics we've kind of gone over the first 6 months of this podcast are kind of under that umbrella of what can we do as a gym from a lower level, and then like surrounding gyms around the area, and then from a bigger level, like how can we spread awareness that these things will just make your life better for longer. You'll live a healthier life longer. Not that some people really don't live by that, but statistics show that we need to get more out there. So like, how do we do that? So like, inspire people to do things, find something they enjoy that's sustainable. So all the communities we talk about all the time on this podcast, Those are just like ways to help bring light to that.
Yeah.
But this is also the point of this conversation right now.
Yeah.
The research and the studies, 2.5 pages worth,
Mm-hmm.
show that this is a thing that is important to talk about,
Yeah.
and like why and like what does it do.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah,
just saying.
I think that leads nicely into the dissertation itself, and we can start to get into that. But basically, it's again the individualized aspect that like what makes it enjoyable for someone over here is not going to be enjoyable for
Yeah.
me. It's not going to be enjoyable. Like so,
Yeah.
let's find out now if there is empirical evidence, to go back to that
Sure.
term, for the inter-individual differences, idiographic differences.
That's a new one.
Sorry to drop that one. Yeah,
No, I don't know if they're ready for it, but it's cool.
Google it.
Google it if you don't. It's worth a Google.
Yeah. So we talked about kind of
Anyway.
the procedures, which basically there's kind of two studies technically for the dissertation. I hate bragging. Most people do one. I did two.
Most people do know that you hate bragging too.
It ticks me off when I brag, so I try not to.
Yeah, I respect that about you.
But no, so the idea was that survey that you did 84 times was given to, what was the number? I think it was a little over 300 people in the Knoxville community.
Okay.
Just one time. Like when they were about to work out, they filled out the exact same survey. Just like circled ratings of all these different items purported to impact readiness to exercise. And from that 300 plus data set, we created a population level profile of readiness to exercise. So we did the math correctly, and this is what it means to be ready for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And then we had you and 10 other people do the exact same survey, and you each got a profile of readiness. Mm-hmm. And so those 11 profiles were compared to the population profile. And I'll jump ahead to the results. Basically, they were not the same. So that just reinforces the idea that you could ask an entire population what it means to be ready and get a profile, and it's going to be different when you start asking individuals from that. So again, not to paint into a corner and say, we asked 387 people, this is what it means to be ready, ask everybody, and stick with that.
Mm-hmm.
Saw that there was heterogeneity in the profiles of readiness.
Some good words today.
I'm dropping them.
You
Watch
might-
your step, dude.
Yeah.
I'm dropping these big words. Speaking of step, I don't know if they can't see the question threes. Might pop the shoes up real quick. No.
Shout out
Allen Iverson,
the GOAT.
the GOAT.
The GOAT PG.
Everybody knows that. Steph who?
Who's don't talk to me, Chris. I hate him. Anyway.
So we did that with everybody, then created your profile, and I think now we can just sort of stick on you and your experience.
I guess we can talk about real quick like what the questions were like.
Yes.
So like the options it was giving you to answer.
Mhm.
It's like one of those surveys you'll see like somewhat agree.
Yeah.
Does that sound right?
Yeah.
I want to get the verbiage right because I think it's appropriate.
I think it was something like
Most likely, like
or no, I think it was a Likert scale, but yeah, it's just
Yeah.
when you like have 5.
so like it'll ask you a
options.
question and it's like extremely ready, like somewhat ready, like
Yeah.
neutral, not as ready, something along those lines. Where it gives you like that kind of scale to choose from on each question, and it's just basically like it'll send me a message, take the survey. It's 4 times a day.
Yep.
Just throughout the day, like what I'm doing at that exact moment, and I tried to stick to that as much as possible. Like sometimes I was like doing something I couldn't answer, I was at work or something, but for the most part, at that moment I would get it. I'll be like, I can't need the answers just because I think it's important. So like sometimes I would get it when I was at work or I was at home or coming to the gym or I was at the gym. So and these just questions just like and you can kind of get into that, like what those basically were. But just to kind of give some background on like what the surveys actually were, like it was like 21 questions.
I think it was a lot. I think it was 51.
Oh no,
51
21 days.
ratings,
Sorry,
but
21 days.
days. Yeah.
Yeah. However many questions it was, but it took like 3 minutes. It was
Yeah.
super easy just to like go through, boom, boom, boom.
Yeah.
How you feeling? It's not like it wasn't anything crazy, but anyway.
So there was 51 items, and some of them all related towards like a consistent construct. So like there was like mood. So you might have like calm, happy, stressed, all these things, right? And then so everybody would rate how they were feeling in that moment on those items, and then there would also be a random hypothetical scenario where it was like, if you had to work out right now, how do you think you'd feel? Or if you had to work out right now, what would you do? Upper, lower, like kind of these, again, hypothetical scenarios, so that we could start to have these scores that would generate from that survey and how it might correlate to how you think you'd feel or how ready you feel. And that way it kind of like anchored the participants into, all right, start thinking about your mood and your physical state, and now pretend you're about to exercise, and let's see how one might impact the other. So yeah, 4 times a day randomly throughout the day. And then we did some statistics, some really fun things with that. I think I'll spare you, but I mean, it was clicking buttons. Yeah.
You or me personally?
That did the stats?
Yeah, like
Me.
oh, I
You
didn't
didn't do
know,
stats.
but I didn't know what you were like referencing.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
once I had your 84
Oh, okay.
surveys, I
Crunch some numbers.
crunched the numbers, dude. Big numbers guy.
Yeah, you crunch numbers like I've never seen.
I know.
Dummies on my own.
That's what everybody's telling me.
Yeah, but go ahead and talk more about like what you want to necessarily talk about with the study. I mean, you got your notes for a reason. Let's dive in
Sure
a little
do.
bit.
So, one thing that we wanted to do, because this was sort of a follow-up study.
And I mean, if you want to focus on me, like you said, like go ahead.
Hey, that's all I wanted to do. I'm not trying to make you blush or anything, but
Anyway,
I almost made it bad. But so we did sort of like a preliminary study before my dissertation, which was essentially what I told you as far as like the group comparison with the individual profiles, found the heterogeneity, and it was like, all right, this kind of is proof of concept that the individual person doesn't always feel like the group feels. But what that study was missing, amongst other things, because it was just like secondary data, what it was missing was this aspect of social validity. So like whether or not it makes sense or matters to the individual. Because in a hypothetical scenario, right, I could present you your profile of readiness and tell you that here's the things that mathematically should mean the most to you and your exercise experience. But you could see that and be like, no, like that doesn't matter to me. So there's the math aspect, and then there's the human aspect. So that was like the big missing piece for the dissertation that the interviews helped get at, where we could get actual feedback from you and the other participants about like how meaningful these profiles are. Because if everybody was like, I don't really care, like none of this stuff matters to me, I actually base my readiness on ABC, that would have been very unfortunate. But we could say, all right, I guess this is a method that we don't need to use anymore. But fortunately, we didn't find that. We found that a lot of people mentioned that their profiles were relevant. Like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. I can see why my profile is this, that, or the other thing. But some of it highlighted the fact that people's life circumstances changed over time, and that impacted their score. Like one participant, one of their biggest determinants of readiness was like illness, I'll say, like because there was some sick and nauseous and like items like that in the survey, and that popped up big for them. And he was like, well, I was like in the hospital for 6 of those days of the survey. So I ranked those really high because I was feeling bad. But he was like, that's not usual for me. Like if this was 8 weeks ago, I wasn't in the hospital. That stuff doesn't matter. So it was good to get this general idea that yes, things matter and they fluctuate. So now we can take these results with a little grain of salt, rather than just holding on to it forever and being like, nope, sorry, it said sickness. That's what matters to you the most. Like we know that we can circle back to certain items if we need to. But yeah, that's another time for me to stop because I feel like I'm talking too much.
No, that's the point.
Yeah.
We want to know. The people want to know, you know?
So in general, we found decent agreement. Like most people were like, yes, that makes sense. But throughout these interviews, we also asked kind of, what the information means to them. And based on those responses, we created transcripts of the interviews, analyzed those, and certain themes and sub-themes emerged. And one that really popped out, largely in part to you, was this idea of psychological grit or mental grit, where sometimes people were not feeling ready, sometimes they don't feel ready, but that there's value in pushing through it anyways, within reason, so that certain things are push throughable.
All these fancy words, and that's what you call
I was gonna say, I don't think that might be the dumbest thing I've ever said.
I think it's just a testament to the authenticity that you bring to the table.
I am who I am.
Yeah.
I can't be
Take me or
nobody
leave
else.
me.
Don't leave me though.
All right, well.
Pause. But things like, we didn't dive into this during the interview, so again, taking what I'm about to say with a grain of salt, but things like physical condition, not push throughable, right? Like if someone was doing a little pre-workout survey and it was like, my knee hurts, my back hurts, whatever, as a coach, we wouldn't suggest being like, time to grind.
My neck, my back,
et cetera, and my et cetera.
If you know, you know.
But maybe the mental aspects, like mood, like energy, that might be push throughable, right? So it's nice to learn about yourself, find out what,
from a research point of view, you know what I mean? I'm sure people can think things about themselves and learn things about themselves just through trial and error.
Yeah.
But to see empirical, hardcore evidence and research and statistics, I don't know, it's just a different perspective, I think.
Yeah.
And it's just you can't argue those facts. These are statistics because they are what they are. This is how you answered. Personally, this is what you did. Yeah.
Exactly.
You crunch numbers. This is where you came. Yeah, literally crunch them.
But yeah, that's kind of the overall goal from an applied perspective, is that okay, this is cool, but nobody's going to read the 180-page document that sums this up. But what we can do is disperse this information to the masses and encourage that type of mindfulness of paying attention to your pre-exercise states, physical and mental states, and how you feel during your workout. And on a personal level, start making those connections, or talk to your coach, because your coaches are there to help you get after it if you're feeling great, or dial it back if you're feeling not. Or your coach is going to be there to say, I know you're not feeling great, but if it's all up here, then it's time for you to grind.
Yeah.
And so drawing those personal connections so that you can go, you know what, when I only sleep 5 hours and stay out a little too late, having a couple 2-3 irons, and I don't feel great.
Yeah.
And the more negative those exercise experiences are, you're just making yourself more and more vulnerable to falling off the wagon and being like, I don't feel good when I go there. And it's like, do you not feel good, or are you not doing the things?
Like, why?
Exactly. Why don't you feel good?
Let's boil it down.
Boil it down.
Yeah.
So that's the goal, is to encourage that thought process. You don't need to do the research. We'll do it for you. But like, be aware.
Yeah.
You know, you're in the driver's seat. You're living your life. So optimize your workouts.
Yeah.
The better you feel, the more it becomes a habit. The more it becomes a habit, the better you feel, the better you move, the better you live, all that good stuff. And so you wanna capitalize on that.
Yeah, and I guess that kind of leads into the topics we talk about, like sustainability, finding the actual thing that gives you the joy and gives you that kind of feeling subconsciously, like, I like going there, so I'm going to keep going there.
Yeah.
Like, these are topics we have discussed, but like, it's understanding why and what kind of gets you to that point, I think, is important. To not only touch on, but to continue to like figure out reasons to show evidence that this is like what we're trying to do to get people to be healthy.
Yep.
It's not just black and white, like as it might seem it is, like work out or don't work out. There's all these different factors, and this is just like prime example of understanding what research can show, but like all the topics we talk about and like why you feel those ways and like the way your body feels when you do it from a statistic and evidence and research standpoint, as opposed to just like a conversation with your coach or your person you're training with. I think those are just all ways to go about it, but it's not just like black and white. It's very like multi-dimensional. There's a lot of factors going into it.
Absolutely.
So this is kind of how we got into this kind of conversation and then into his case study specifically and just like what the evidence shows and like what his numbers crunched out to be. So, you know what I mean? I think that just pays dividends to like the mindset I'm having with this podcast to get people on like yourself to bring light to this, that from a specific standpoint of like literal research, you could show people that like it's important to be healthy and lift weights more than twice a week.
Yep.
And how that's sustainability for the rest of your life is important to have a healthy life.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's it.
That's what we're doing.
All right. Thanks for watching.
That's what we're doing here.
We're doing it. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think that's, again, the thing that's encouraging is that a lot of the coaches that I've interacted with, you, Kurt, Chris, Mallory, like these people already kind of do this. So it's like, please keep doing it. And for the members and the people that are listening, like your coaches are a resource that can help you make those decisions. Like, is it time to let her rip and get after it? Or, I mean, it could be a quick discussion. We don't need to have these long conversations before a workout.
You could. You really could if you wanted to,
but during a warm-up, walking around, being like, how are we feeling? You ready? What's it going to be today? You know?
Yeah, and that's important. That's like a whole different kind of topic that kind of ties into like those connections, those personal relationships you build and the trust that comes with that, and understanding how to like when to push, when not to push, to navigate how you're feeling versus goals and all these things that just ties into like your readiness. How ready are you? And like if you're driving past a gym and you have that negative feeling versus like, I can't wait to go there on Monday type of thing.
Yep.
I don't know, is there anything else on your notes you wanted to touch on?
Not really. I mean, kind of the other, I guess, like cool reinforcement thing is that,
I guess go back to the thing. Did we really discuss like what the grit thing kind of?
It was basically, let me see.
Like what?
Yeah.
Just from conversations that you and I have had from this, that like that was like an interesting thing that you didn't really think would come of the study, but like you found out that it was like a proponent of.
There's a lady named, I don't know if it's Angela, but we'll say Angela.
Ange for short.
Oh, Ange.
We'll call her Ange. That might not be her name. Don't want to disrespect anyone, but
it's
for the sake of this, keeping it rolling.
Yeah, it's definitely Duckworth.
Dr. Duckworth?
I don't know.
Mrs. Duckworth. Lady Duckworth.
Lady Duckworth.
We don't know.
Yeah. Probably definitely a doctor, but
Angela.
She wrote a book. I wish I knew. It might be called Grit. Just Grit.
All right.
But it's like, it's for the masses. It's not like a research book. Okay. But she has also done research. But anyways, through this...
You've done research. Are you going to write a book?
Dude, I'm already writing. No.
My life's a story.
Yeah, mine's a movie, dude.
Oh, jeez, here we
Dude,
go.
last night I
Alright.
watched a movie.
Anyway.
So, yeah, that was a cool thing that came out of this research project is basically like the way things go, the results when you're analyzing like interviews and what people are saying, you can't really plan your discussion, which is the last portion of the paper, until you get those results.
Mm-hmm.
So, kind of going into it, we had the intro, we had the methods, and we had no clue what was going to come up, right? Like, we had to just sort of like wait and get the results, and then the discussion is driven by what people say. And we expected things like incongruency, where people would be like, you know, my math doesn't equal my actual internal perceptions. People that wear like Whoop bands or like aura rings, whatever Ian wears, because he's very cool. Shout out Ian. No, those actually are very cool. There's another study on the way regarding Whoop bands and aura rings. But anyways, it's very common for people to get like a Whoop readiness score. Anyway, when I used to wear a Whoop, it would be like you're 8% recovered. Or like I was never recovered, but I would always feel fine. You know what I mean? So, and I had a couple friends that were wearing things like that before the study even started, who would mention like, Whoop says I'm 88% recovered. I'm in the green, but I feel bad.
Yeah.
And so in the back of my mind, I'm like, that's gonna come up in these interviews. People are gonna see their score.
That's an interesting thing,
right?
And we've touched on that. I know Mallory and myself more so on like the Apple Watch, like calories burned aspect.
Oh yeah.
Not the same thing, but kind of the same thing. How that, like, people fixate on that. Like,
Yeah.
I have to burn these calories or I'm not getting a good workout. Like that's like in a negative emotional state, which applies to this. But like that's just another example.
Because some people mentioned that they don't want to see a readiness score or a recovery score because it does steer them where they're like, wait, I was feeling good, but Whoop says I gotta chill, so I gotta chill. And it's like, whoa, that's what we want to get away from.
Hey.
So we kind of expected that
not to diss Whoop or anything, you know.
No, shout out Whoop.
Shout out Whoop.
Used to have one.
Sure, me too.
I actually wore it 2 different phases of my life.
Was that?
Yeah, it was like 2019. I was like, Whoop bands sound awesome.
Yeah.
And then it kept telling me to sleep more, and I was like, here's the thing about grad school.
I got work to do.
I ain't sleep.
Bucko.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then I got it in 2021 or something like that. I was like, I'm going to get it, and I'm going to listen to it this time.
Yeah.
And then I didn't listen to it. I was like, I'm still in grad school.
Talk about going in and out of phases.
Yeah.
But, you know.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I'm told I'm not easy to rein in. Bit of a... I think I had... Never mind. Anyway. I think it's called oppositional defiance disorder.
Is that...
That's a real thing. I think when I was a kid,
like
someone said go left, I'd just go right. Like, you will not tell me what to do. I'm just going to do it my way. Yeah.
It goes back to that problem with authority thing.
Dude,
we talked about on the other episode.
It was very bad.
Oh, you want me to go left?
No.
Right.
So the Whoop would be like, sleep more. And I'd be like, I'm going to sleep less. You think I need 7? I'm going 4.
That is so funny. Oh, my goodness.
So,
anyway.
Yeah, so I had that Whoop and never listened to it. But other people said similar things.
Yeah.
And, we were talking about how it would, like, deter people. Like, people would say, oh, I thought I felt good, but if Whoop says I'm going to feel bad if I go to the gym, then I'm not going to go to the gym. Yeah. And so it's like, back to, again, we don't want to fixate on that. We want to use it as a tool if we need to.
Yeah.
Or if we can. But we expected that. What we didn't expect necessarily, for whatever reason, was the opposite, where you kind of came in a lot with the grit aspect and the like, because I think I should have checked this, but I think your profile was heavy on some of the psychological aspects. Like your readiness was was determined primarily by mental status. And so when I like brought that up to you during the interview and said something about, here's your most important items, you mentioned that like, it makes sense that psychological or mental states would come up, but that for you, they weren't that relevant because you push through it. Mm-hmm. That you have this kind of habit or instinct to grind through it. So that prompted kind of a whole section of the discussion to go into psychological grit, which Duckworth wrote about, and that there was
did you have
certain times
you included that in your like defense?
What do you mean? Which part?
The grit part.
Yeah, I mean it's like a.
I'm just curious. Like, did anyone like have anything to say on that kind of like finding?
Not like a strict like focus on it, but it did prompt questions about Whoop bands in particular and aura. Although I don't know as much about aura, like the difference between readiness and recovery.
Yeah,
because I think people with Whoop bands only get a recovery score and they translate that into readiness.
Okay, yeah.
I see what you mean. What we sort of found, inspired by a lot of your responses, that readiness is not recovery and recovery is not readiness. They're related, but there's a lot more to it because you can be recovered and not ready.
Sure.
You can be ready and not recovered. So like there was this kind of mismatch that we hadn't thought too much about when it came to those wearable devices until that section like came about. So yeah, there's a whole piece on that.
Yeah, I was just curious to like if that prompted good defense or questions or all that kind of thing, just based off of what you had to talk about with these people. Yep. And yeah, I remember like our exit interview, like going over all of the graphs and stuff from the numbers you crunched, just everything that we kind of took from my questions just personally, but like overall, did you find that it was like interesting across the board, or like did you like seeing other people's kind of
it was nice because
perspectives?
It was a great finding in general to like get the reinforcement of things that we thought were going to happen, like the mismatch between the math and what people thought, because it reinforced like don't rely so much on your Whoop band or your Aura ring. Like that's going to give you some information.
Yeah, tools,
for sure. But a lot of it is based on physiological things. Like it's looking at your heart rate, it's looking at your sleep, it's looking at things that it can objectively monitor, but it's not taking into account subjective things. How are you feeling? What type of mood are you in? What type of stress are you under? Things like that. And that's where you need to kind of like step away from the wearable device, not use it as the only tool, use it to add to the checklist of what you're looking for, but that at the end of the day, these subjective feelings matter. So if you have that ability to say, all right, physically I'm good, mentally maybe I'm lagging a little bit, that's when you need that grit, that perseverance, the kind of mental drive to continue. So it was great to get that perspective because we didn't anticipate it, and it helped boost up a lot of the applied implications. I was going to say implication, but that's a little too much. Applied implications where it's like, don't lean on objective things too much. You still need to know yourself. Your coaches need to be aware of when to push you, because sometimes you need the external person behind you being like, suck it up, we're going to go. We've talked about your goals. We know that there's going to be times like this where you just want to chill and you need someone to push you, and that's what the coach is there to do. So subjective matters as much as objective. And we had a feeling about that, but unless people said it in an interview, we weren't going to be able to talk about it. So it was great that it came up.
Yeah. And so that just like rounds out like the way you get challenged by people. Sometimes you need to have that not like your internal, not external challenge. Like you want to internally be able to challenge yourself and make yourself push through, but you also do need those outside people externally, coaches, people you can rely on to challenge you when you don't necessarily feel like it mentally. So like just Mallory and I have conversations about this all the time with her people at Block Strong in our clinics, and like when we challenge them, like we think you can do more, form looks good, everything looks all right, like you're moving well, push it, see what happens. There's also time to not do that. So like that's where those conversations come in. So it's interesting to hear that from empirical research evidence, how you could apply that from like these surveys and understanding where that comes from and all these things. So I think that's just cool to see that, and I think people can relate to it, and I think it'll be interesting for people to hear that it's not just like gimmicky for coaches. You need to have that, but it's also backed up by like science, like just how your body is feeling, how your mental is feeling. But these are all important factors that tie into a sustainable life of living a healthy lifestyle, moving your body, lifting weights. All these things are important for health long term, which is ultimately the goal and what we're trying to do, you know. So the more evidence and research and stats and facts and all the things we can bring to that will hopefully shed some light and maybe get some people inspired to get that 27.6%, probably less, up to, I mean, as much as we can.
100.
So, 104.
Every
if you don't lift twice a week, shame on you.
You're out. But no, to maybe wrap things up and go full circle, I think isn't that what Kurt did last time?
Yeah.
A long time ago?
You did Venn diagram, too. Yeah.
Dude, anything involving circles gets me fired up.
Post Malone?
Post Malone.
Circles?
Mac Miller. R.I.P. All right, nice. But to go full circle, I think
bring it home.
A lot of the conversations, good conversations, have been about what you do in the gym impacts your life outside of it.
He said it, not me.
And
his words, not mine.
This is bringing in the other end of the equation, where what you do outside the gym impacts your performance, impacts your life outside the gym. If I could...
No, that... Bring it there, right? That was phenomenal.
Thanks for watching.
Yeah. I think we do talk about that a lot, like what we do inside and how that affects outside, but you have to think about like what you just said. Like, what are you doing to set yourself up for success in the gym, which will also then kind of bring it back as we're doing. And that's just like the hey, cookies. How that kind of cycle and like just thing keeps the revolution keeps moving.
The revolution will not be televised, as
true.
They say.
That's facts. But that's an interesting thing you said that, and I think we could take that into like more conversations, like what are you doing outside the gym to set yourself up for that day to make sure you get the most out of your workout so you're able to keep coming back.
Yep.
So like that's also an important like perspective on it that you haven't really thought about, or what we talked about at least. But it's cool that you said that. I think we can kind of use that to gauge some conversations too in the future.
For sure.
Know what I'm saying?
I feel you, dog.
You have anything else you want to bring to the table?
That's it. This was nice. This is very good.
Yeah, I thought this was like I think people are gonna enjoy this like informational episode. I've been wanting to do this for a while now. Just
glad I could get
this is how we could get down here and get this on rolling. And then I think we can kind of lead this into the more specialized discussions with you. Definitely like what you're doing now, what you're coaching. You are back at OTF, but what you're teaching.
I didn't tell you they offered me a little head coach position already.
Obviously, they offered it to you. Did you accept it?
I said maybe. It's like full time, so I do be busy.
You do be busy.
Professing.
Yeah, professing your love for
Steelers and exercise.
Yeah, go Lurs.
Tell you what, brother.
Tell you what. Let's say a quick thank you that Chris is not here.
Yeah, it's better.
Yeah, it's way better.
It's better without Chris.
Yeah, that's what I've been saying this whole time.
Every time I do anything without Chris, I go,
my life's significantly better.
This is better without Chris.
We have to go see him here shortly, and it's going to go downhill quick.
Yeah, I'm really only there to see Kaylee.
Is she even going to be there?
I hope so.
It's a diaper party. I don't know.
Oh, yeah, I guess I don't know what
all
those
dudes
things are. Yeah,
I don't
just
know.
dudes in diapers. Dudes in diapers.
I'm assuming she'll be there.
Has to be. I touched her belly earlier.
Did you really?
The first pregnant belly I ever touched.
Yeah, I don't know.
It took a lot out of me.
What did it kick you?
No.
Did Cam kick you?
He's lucky he didn't.
Don't you?
When you get out.
You know that kid ain't birthing nothing with aggression.
No.
He's a
low T.
Yeah. Oh, that's funny.
No, but she'll be there. And yeah, this was good. This is
Cool. Yeah. I mean, anything happened recently or looking forward to? Positive. Always got to end it up on that note.
Yep.
Anything coming up that you're looking forward to?
Let's see.
Anything?
Well, recently I took Marshall to the vet.
Oh.
Thursday.
Best dog Marshall.
Best dog Marshall.
Is he your full-time
He's
dog
my
now?
full-time pup.
Beth just wanted you to
I
have
thought it was
him?
going to be a temporary handoff, and so
I'm sure you like
I'm
that.
pumped. Yeah. But I was pleasantly surprised because I was like, when did
Yeah.
you think? And she's like, oh, no, he's yours. I was like, hell yeah.
Yeah, respect.
But took him to the vet on Thursday. He's like 13 or 14. He's old. I did the math. He's in his 90s.
Getting tough.
As far as
Getting
dog
tough.
years. But clean bill of health. They're like, he's crushing it.
That's
So
awesome.
that was very good.
Yeah,
Because I've
that's what I
cried
want.
about him
Yeah.
recently.
This is what we want. Sure.
I think he'll probably live forever. So that'll be good.
As will you.
Well, I hope not. Just kidding. But that was something good that just happened.
Sure.
And then coming up, I mean, summer, but
Yeah.
Orange Theory does this like event called a dry try. It's like doing a triathlon indoors.
Okay.
They do it in the spring and in the fall, and so the spring one's coming up, and I always love coaching those. So that'll be in 2 weeks. So I'm pretty fired up. Yeah, trying to make some changes up there.
All right.
Get the people motivated.
Yeah. Tell them to listen to this podcast.
I'm gonna tell them tune in. Got the first full heat in a while there,
Full heat.
so that'll be
There
good.
you go. That's big.
What about
time.
you?
Well, Chris's ugly face later. Diaper party. That's always. I mean, cool to see some dudes.
Dang, I should have said
hang out
that.
with the bros. No, yeah.
That was a
whatever.
good
He's
answer,
all
dude.
right. He's whatever. Yeah, whatever. Good Olympic lifting class this morning.
I saw that.
Yeah. So like
The
I've been
story.
doing that a lot lately with like warm up PVC pipe, and like I like when people buy into it and you get that kind of cool video, which I got today.
Yeah.
It's been like, kind of like hit or miss over the last month or so at the Open. So
Yeah.
like people have been focusing on that. Hopefully we get back to like more regularly scheduled classes with a lot of people. But that was a cool thing this morning. I had a lot of. It seemed like that was a cool video to post.
Looks
and then,
packed.
Yeah, whenever we get like a good class, it's like anywhere from 10 to 14 people.
That's good.
So I think we had 11 or 12 this morning. It was
Nice.
good. And then I have with Mallory, we have a lunge clinic coming up. So this is
right.
our
I did
first
see that.
lunge one. So the clinics were designed to her people are a little bit different than what you get here at Aurelius. So it's a cool demographic that's different to like spread some knowledge and just kind of gauge with people with her alongside me and me alongside her with her people. But we created those to kind of help people just move functionally and get a better understanding of things, and people seem to really enjoy it and that kind of thing. So that's always fun that I get to do that with her, get the privilege of helping out her people with her. So I'm looking forward to that too. But yeah, that's pretty much it.
We spring ahead tomorrow.
Oh yeah, damn right.
And it sounds like
Yeah.
Yins are going to lunge ahead.
We're gonna end it on that note. You know what I mean? All right, but yeah, definitely, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Lighter, longer.
Wow. For real, that gets
yeah.
me so pumped.
Yeah.
Driving
Yeah.
to work when it's
And
light.
Chris said it the other day. Birds chirping on a spring morning.
Oh, don't even.
Don't eat.
You're going to make me act up right now, dude. Legs twitching. Birds are chirping.
Yeah, but anyway, that was a great episode. I think people are gonna love it, and we'll get you back more for sure. But
Thanks for having
thanks
me,
for
dog.
coming on, big dog.
Of course.
Go Vols and go Baldwin Wallace.
HTP.
Fighting Yellow Jackets.
You have been listening to the Pros with Con podcast. You can find us on Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, YouTube, Spotify, and Anchor. Come back each week for a new episode. Thanks for listening.